Rock, 4-H agent for Lincoln County, and today we're talking about the 4-H Incubation and Embryology Project. But first, let's get started with the 4-H Pledge. Welcome back. Today we're talking about incubation and embryology, and I wanted to go over some of the supplies and materials that you'll need for this project before we get into our lesson for the day. The first thing you'll see here is an incubator. An incubator is what we use to warm up our eggs. It's kind of like our electric hen. Instead of having a chicken come in that sits on our eggs to keep them warm, our incubator is going to do that job for us. You may have seen incubators in the past that were made out of styrofoam, and those work just fine too. These are just some newer ones, and we like them. We like to use them in 4-H because you can see into it very easily with this clear dome. So what you need to know about the incubator is only your teacher will be touching the incubator, okay? And the first thing you'll want to do when you get your incubator is to plug it in. And it should be preset. You'll hear it come on. And it should be preset for the right temperature and the right amount of days. So you shouldn't have to mess anything with the buttons at all. If you do need to make changes, you press and hold the minus and plus sign and use the OK sign to navigate through the digital settings. But like I said, it should be pre-programmed, ready to go. You'll hear the motor start up, and what's happening inside there is we have a heating element and a fan. And right now I can feel the fan blowing air down. So as our coils get hot, the sound you hear is the fan, and it's pushing that warm air down to circulate it all throughout the incubator, okay? So the first thing that's really important for incubation is heat. We want our eggs to be 99.5 degrees. That's the perfect temperature for our eggs to grow and develop into baby chicks. The other thing that you'll need in your incubator, let's set it over here out of the way. You'll notice inside there's a turner. And this is just a fake egg I have here, but our eggs will sit right on them. And what will happen is every 45 minutes, you'll hear the motor and it clicks here, and it's just some gears, and it turns our eggs. This one's not heavy. An actual egg will roll as it goes. As it turns, it will roll. And that way we're keeping all sides of our egg toasty warm. The other thing you'll need to do though, before you get your eggs, is add water. And there is a tray here, and it connects, and you'll see it's a reservoir here. So you'll pour a little bit of water in here, and this will hold water. You'll add water to the second reservoir 3 days before your eggs hatch. The reason we want water in our incubator is so that our eggs don't dry out. Water in our incubator provides humidity, which you might know from watching the weather in the summertime, that humidity is moisture in the air. And so if we don't have any water in here, our eggs will dry out, and it'll be very hard for our baby chicks to hatch out of their shells. So you want to add water daily, just a little bit. I like to get a water bottle and just sit beside it, and you just pour it in, and there's a tube underneath here, and you'll see if don't let it overflow here. And then right before they hatch, we want to increase the humidity as much as we can so that the shells of the eggs can really soften up. So once your eggs are in and you've got some water added in there, and you're adding water daily, you really don't have to do anything at all except make sure your incubator has electricity and is still heating your eggs. Something you can do in the meantime is you can candle your eggs. So a candle is just like a really bright flashlight. You'll plug it in, and then you'll just turn it on, and it's soft here, so you can set the egg right on top. And if I did it in here, this isn't a real egg, so you wouldn't be able to see anything, but you really want it in a dark space. So I would try to find a dark corner of the room, or maybe a closet or something, and what'll happen is you can candle your eggs, and it will light up inside. Not like an x-ray, but enough for you to see changes happening from day to day. This is something I send with our elementary school students, and it kind of gives them an idea of what's happening each day that your eggs are in the incubator. So you open it up, and it shows what kind of development should be happening inside your egg on each day. So this is day 2. So if you candle on day 2, you'll see a little bit of red mixed in with your yellow. And as you go along, You'll notice if you candle every day, that's fine. Don't candle the same egg every day. Try to mix it up and get a different one. And you can keep track of an egg. If you get to day 7 and you should have an embryo in there, looks kind of like an alien, but you should have an embryo. So if you candle an egg on day 7 and it still looks mostly yellow and you don't really see any shadowy shapes moving around, you can probably put a mark on that one that it's not fertilized. But don't throw it out just in case we're wrong. And I like to mark my eggs with a crayon. A wax crayon is totally fine and it won't hurt your eggs. Again, you don't have to do that. It's just a neat thing to do as you go through. By day 5 or 6, you'll notice it starts to get really red and you can see blood vessels and veins forming in your egg. And by day 7, when we had our little alien embryo, the embryo can move on its own. So if you candle it, what I like to do is kind of move it back and forth, and it doesn't hurt them, but it makes the embryo move around trying to get itself the right way again. So you can candle from all different angles and see if you see movement in your egg. And you can, these will be with the elementary kids, but they're pretty fun because it shows you what your embryo looks like inside that egg day by day. And then on day 21, you should have a little baby chick. Hopefully. It won't pop out fluffy and cute like this. It'll be wet because it's been inside an egg for 21 days. What you need to know too is on day 17 or 18, so 3 or 4 days before your eggs are ready to hatch, you want to remove them from the turner. It's automatically set to stop turning at day 17, but you want to remove the turner because if you let them hatch on this, there's little areas where like feet and feathers and things could get caught, and we don't want to hurt our chicks. We want to make sure they have the best conditions possible. So you want to move quickly so that they don't get too cool, but you want to take the eggs off the turner. So they'll be on the turner and you just move it to the side, and you're going to have this cardboard thing that you can put inside your incubator. I'll leave this with you, and it just helps them have traction when they first hatch out, the chicks, so they can walk around. It's kind of a rough surface. So you place that there, and then you'll put all of your eggs, you'll just lay them flat on there. And they'll be heavy so they won't roll around. You also want to make sure you add water as much as you can fit in both reservoirs in here. And if you have some wet paper towels or sponges, anything you can put in there to increase the humidity will be great. It will help your eggs hatch because it'll soften the shell up. So once they hatch, you're going to give them a day or two until they're mostly dried out. Oh, I almost forgot too. Once they start hatching, there's a little yellow knob on the front. You want to turn that so that it's letting air in. So there it's closed, and if you turn it up here, it lets a little air in. Once the first chick is fully out, you want to turn that and let some dry air come in there. That'll help our newly hatched chicks dry out a little bit. Once they are sort of dried out, we'll move them to what's called a brooder box. And there are way fancier versions, but this works just fine for our classroom projects. They can live up to 2 days with no food or water after they hatch, so don't be in a rush to move them. We want them to stay warm and in their little habitat here before we move them out. So your brooder needs a couple things. First, I'll have signs taped on them that reminds you that these are live animals and they're going to be living in your classroom once they hatch out. So they're going to be going to the bathroom, and it's not the cleanest situation. So anytime you come in contact with the incubator, the brooder box, a baby chick, you need to wash your hands or sanitize before so that you're not passing your germs to them. And then as soon as you're finished, you need to sanitize and clean as well. The most difficult thing to remember is not to snuggle the baby chick don't put it up by your face, okay? You can give them germs and bacteria that makes them sick, and they can make you sick as well. So it's okay I like to snuggle them down here when I hold them because our bellies are pretty warm and they're gonna be cold when you get them out of the brooder. So it's okay to hold them, just make sure you sanitize, sanitize, sanitize. That's what the signs are reminding you to do. Wash your hands, sanitize. This is not a clean sanitary area in your classroom. So your brooder needs a few things. It needs a heat line, first of all. So you'll plug this in, and this is just a 100-watt light bulb. It'll put quite a bit of heat out. So you don't have to angle it straight down. They'll find the warm spot. And you don't want the whole box heated. You want them to be able to move around and adjust the temperature themselves. In the bottom, you'll get a bag with some shavings. You'll fill that all in the bottom, of your brooder box so they can move around, gives them a little traction. You can put paper towels in the bottom too and then put the shavings on top, and that's fine. The shavings help with the smell as well because this is their home. This is where they're living, eating, drinking, and going to the bathroom. The next thing is you'll have some chick starter food, and I like to just sprinkle it out on a tray. They only need to be fed once a day. Once they get a few days old, they're going to want to eat continuously. Don't worry about them. As long as they have some to eat at least once a day, they're fine. If you just constantly put it in there, they'll eat it until it's all gone. So just cover the little plate. Once a day should be fine. And the last thing they need is water. So you'll have a waterer. All you do, tap water is fine. You can fill it up. Put this on and turn it upside down. You want to make sure that the food and water are not directly under the heat lamp. Kind of put them in the other side of the brooder. And again, if you touch anything here, you need to sanitize. Sanitize, sanitize, sanitize. So now we're going to go through a presentation, and you're going to learn more about the incubation process, how long it takes, what the temperature needs to be, all the different parts of an egg that help our embryos grow all the way into a fully developed animal right there inside their egg.
Okay, guys, let's get started. Hopefully some of you guys have done this project before, and a lot of this will be review. So the first thing you need to know is the eggs that we have in our incubator are not quite the same as the eggs you can buy at the grocery store. These eggs are fertilized, which means a rooster was present, and supermarket eggs are usually from farms where there are only hens. And so eggs for incubation are grown at special farms called breeder farms. And the first stages of embryonic development start and continue until the egg is laid, and after the egg is laid, incubation is what helps the development process start again. And you probably know a little bit about this even if you've never done the project. And I think this is where the real magic is. The main thing that starts off this whole chain of reactions is heat. As soon as the egg is heated, the fertilized egg, incubation begins and the cells inside the fertilized egg begin to multiply and divide. The first cells formed are similar, and then as they keep dividing, they start specializing and moving into certain groups responsible for certain parts of what will become our chicken. So in nature, when a hen lays an egg, she usually sits on it, and she's sitting on it to keep it warm. So in our case, we won't have a hen in your classroom that's sitting on your eggs. We'll have an incubator that's like an electric hen. It will heat up and keep our eggs at a certain temperature. So after so many cells have divided, they start specializing, and they start breaking off into three separate groups called the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Have you ever wondered how the parts of an egg stay together until you're ready to break it apart? Probably not, but there are many different parts inside of an egg that you've never probably thought of that make it really interesting, and it provides everything our baby chick needs to grow from an embryo into a fully developed animal. If we were to, this is obviously an illustration, not an actual egg, and it's zoomed in so we can see the different parts, but there are more than just the three parts you may have thought of. If I'd ask you what parts of an egg you know, you probably would have said the shell, the yolk, and the egg white. But there's a few extra parts, and it's really neat how the egg is designed to be the perfect habitat for our baby chick to grow from a few cells into a fully formed animal with a heart, circulatory system, nerves, muscle, skeleton, all of that stuff. It's really kind of neat. So let's get started and go over each section and what it is and how it helps our embryo. So the first is the germinal disc or the germ spot. And you may not even be able to see this if you were to crack open an egg. It can be a slight depression, so like a indentation on the surface of the yolk. And sometimes it's a little tiny white spot. And this is usually where the egg gets fertilized. This is where our embryo starts as two cells fusing together and then beginning to multiply. The next are the ropey strands on each side of our yolk, and that's called the chalazi. This is what suspends our yolk, holds it into the center of the egg, so that if you shake an egg around in your hand, it's never going to fully scramble up. Part of why it doesn't is because the chalazi is kind of like a hammock that holds the yolk in place. For our embryo, it's really important because it holds our embryo right in the center, and it prevents them from like leaning and getting stuck to the insides of the egg. So it kind of suspends it in a hammock. The yolk is lazy. It needs the chalazy to hold it in the center of the egg. Next is, it's called the vitelline membrane. It's the membrane that goes around the yolk. And if you've ever cooked, you obviously have seen this membrane. And sometimes if you're trying to scramble an egg, maybe you can't get the yolk to break and you have to kind of stab it with your fork. That's when you are breaking through the vitelline membrane. It keeps the egg yolk and the egg white separate. The shell membranes are two different membranes. You can see there's one that's like this orange color and then this tan color, and there's a darker brown on the outside. The outside is the shell, and then these two other membranes, they kind of look like wet paper, and they stick to the inside of the shell when a raw egg is cracked. If you've ever maybe peeled a boiled egg before, you've probably seen that. It looks like kind of like wet tissue paper or something. Those are membranes, and they're really important for our embryo because they help protect it. They're like a barrier so that it's harder for bacteria to get inside to our embryo. What I think is cool too is in between these two membranes, you'll have air coming in. This is the air cell. We're getting to that though. I'm getting ahead of myself. Next is the shell. It's obviously the outer covering of an egg, and it's made mostly of calcium carbonate. And of course, eggshells can be lots of different colors depending on the breed of the chicken. But it is important to know that the shell is not just like plastic that's totally covering the egg. It has pores in it, just like your skin has pores, meaning that air and moisture and gases and even bacteria can get in and out of the egg. This is why it's important if you're cooking and you're cracking open raw eggs, it's always important to wash your hands, before and after that, because there can be bacteria on the egg and it can get out. It's also why you're able to dye Easter eggs during Easter, and you just put them in, water with some vinegar and then food coloring, and the vinegar starts breaking the shell down. But the egg is also porous, so you can dye it a little bit even without vinegar. It will soak up that dye because there are tiny holes in there. The last thing I want to say about the shell is this air cell. This is in between the inner and outer membranes, and you have an air pocket. It's usually in the bigger end of the egg. And when you think back to dyeing Easter eggs, if you put your egg in water, there's always that little part that sticks out at the top. That's the air cell. The older an egg gets, the more the air leaks in there and the more chances that bacteria and bad stuff has also got inside as well. The last two parts are the egg white, or if you want to be fancy, the albumin. This is the egg white, and it's mostly protein, and it's pretty low in calories for you to eat. The yolk is the yellow portion. It's the main source of vitamins, minerals, and fat. It's got the cholesterol, the animal fat in it. It's what makes a scrambled egg delicious, I think. But the yolk and the albumin are important to our embryo because they serve as food for our growing chick, because it's going to be in there for 21 days, 3 weeks, and you're not going to be like infusing food into the egg. So everything that embryo needs is inside that egg. Our embryo will have an umbilicus, which sounds a lot like an umbilical cord, right? And that will kind of go out into the yolk and the albumin, and slowly over time, our baby chick will absorb all of those nutrients, and that will be the food it eats for the first 3 weeks, and then it can survive a couple days after hatching without food because it's absorbed all those nutrients from our egg. So what we're talking about today is embryology. It's just the science of studying the unborn or the unhatched. You may have learned the trick that OLOGY means the study of whatever's at the beginning of the word. So if you want to get really technical, embryology is the study of embryos. Embryo is a developing thing. It's not quite developed yet. And then incubation is maintaining proper conditions favorable for hatching, growth, development, or reaction. So in our case, it means we're going to want to have warm air. We want to circulate that air, and we want to have humidity in there as well. If you come in contact with the eggs, the incubator, the brooder box, chickens, anything to do with this project, you need to immediately wash your hands or sanitize right after you're finished. Before you hold a chick, you need to make sure your hands are clean so you don't make them sick. And then after you hold a chick or touch an egg or touch the incubator at all, you need to wash or sanitize your hands so that you don't get sick either. The two most important things to remember for this project are temperature and humidity. Temperature is the most important. Our temperature should be between 98 and 101 degrees. A hen's body temperature is 107 internally, so that means their skin temperature is around 100 degrees. That's why we want it to be around that temperature. If it's below 98, your embryo may not fully develop, and if it's above 101, you've probably killed your embryo. Our sweet spot is 99.5 degrees. Humidity, as you probably know, is moisture in the air. Our chicks need humidity to keep them from drying out. So every day your teacher is going to add a little bit of water into the bottom tray of the incubator. And if there's a question, it's generally better to have too much humidity instead of not enough humidity. So I've mentioned a few times, but we haven't said officially, it takes 21 days for the chicks to fully grow from embryo to fully developed chick. These are just some pictures. The first thing you'll see is a few little cracks. We call this piping or peeping, and what I think is cool is right before this, or right when this happens, you'll be able to hear the chick chirping inside of there. They're ready to come out, so they start breathing air from that air cell inside there, and so I think it's kind of neat. You'll hear them making sounds inside the egg right before they hatch out, so be quiet and see if you get to hear it. This is a wing coming out, and you can see there's broken shell everywhere. It's pretty messy. This one is coming out backwards. This is the toe facing out, so this is going to be the back of him. And you may not realize this, but they've been in an egg floating in yolk and albumin for 21 days, so they're not cute and fluffy when they first hatch out. They're wet, and I think they kind of look like a dinosaur personally. Be careful not to try to pull this shell off. Sometimes it can be like stuck on there if your humidity wasn't high and it's dried out. So be careful if you're doing anything like that, because you may hurt the skin, you may rip or tear its skin because you're much stronger than it is. So be careful and try not to help it out. It needs to hatch out on its own. Then of course, once they are dried off and fully hatched out, they're going to be cute and fluffy. Some of them may be yellow and some of them may be black or brown. We'll have lots of different kinds of chicks that we get eggs from. This is a white leghorn, and when it hatches, it's yellow. We might also have black Australorps or Rhode Island Reds. It just depends what we get from the poultry farm. You will be able to see the egg tooth. It's an extra hard part of the beak that the chick has just to help it hatch out and break out of that shell. And then within a few days, you'll notice it just goes away. It kind of falls off and gets absorbed back into the beak.